Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, idiot, and loin streamer. And as you can see today, we are doing a book. It's called Adolf in Wunderland by Carlton Mellick III. I have read one of his other books before. It was a collection of short stories called The Hammerhead Wives. And this is a novella, about 160 pages, just short of it. And we're going to get into it today. Now, I am going to go ahead and say I was very disappointed in this book. It is a trip, though, so the cover in this is your warning before we get into it. However, before we really get started, number one, if you enjoy what I do here on the channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number two, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the links down in the description below. The number one way to be featured is through Lemoy, the monthly prompt writing contest, where I give you a prompt. You write a short story using that prompt, and on the first Monday video of the month, we bask in your creativity. The second way to be featured is if you are an indie author and you have a book out or a book that is coming out. If you submit it to the Fresh Meat feature, that is your first page, your first chapter. That is your first chapter and your cover. It'll be read here on the channel to hopefully help more people find your work. Recently, I have added the book that was read for Monday to my reading list because I'm intrigued. I saw trigger warnings for cannibalism and rituals in there, and it's got religious stuff going on, and I was vibing with the way that it was written. So that is onto my reading list. Do not be surprised if it shows up in a book review at some point on here. I don't know when. I got some stuff to catch up on as I recover from, I feel like I've been burnt out these last couple of weeks, but we're recovering. We got a book review. Hopefully we'll also have a comic review in the future. The third thing is, if you would like to check out any of my books, they're available at any of your favorite places. Two Good Books, including the local library upon request. My newest novel, Body More Zero, is coming out in October and is currently available for ARC reading on both NetGalley and Book Sirens. So if you want to get your hands on it sooner, check those, but do know that that is not the final version. Mostly just catching the finalities of the typos that I can catch. With that said, let's get into the starter comments. So I opened this already saying that I read Hammerhead Wives a couple of years ago now at this point, and I've read a couple other books that were bizarro. I mostly learned about bizarro in 2015, 2016 when I was in graduate school, and mostly see it, in the kind of artsy, not quite college area, and I think it's vaguely related to extreme horror, but not technically, because it is also weird. It has a lot of the same things going on in it where it kind of just goes as far as it can, though bizarro is obviously more magical random stuff going on. This is kind of closer to children's cartoons. Like if you look at Cat Dog, if you look at Chowder, if you look at Amazing Gumball, that's closer to what bizarro is like. So it can be good. It can also, when it's bad, it goes really bad. Another book that I did on this channel that is leaning into bizarro, it was in a group of book reviews that I gave, and it was called Cartoons in the Suicide Forest. And so that was something that I reviewed last year after rereading it, and it was a book that I actually got at AWP when I visited in DC in 2017. So yeah, it's been a while, but this is making me question if I ever want to touch a bizarro again intentionally. I had a book of bizarro that I also got at AWP. Was not impressed with, and that was an anthology, so there were a lot of authors in there. Was still not impressed. But so now we got some questions that I'll bring up at the end of this. Anyway, the haunted vagina, which immediately gets into descriptions of sex. And there's stuff like the butt plug or anal plug, whatever it's called. Some of them are like much more, and I feel like they warn you that it's like that. That said, look at this cover, look at the setting, and let me know what you think. You might not know this, but they are often a very touchy subject, to say the least. While in other cases it is used for easy bad guy coding, like, oh, look, Grady Hendrix had his bad guy vampire love the Nazis because also the younger brother liked the Nazis, and it's blah, blah, blah. Or it is used to be edgy. And that's not to say that you can't write good alt history or use the symbology for something. You've also got like He's Back, which is a German book about if Hitler was brought to contemporary times and then had to get with it, and it's a comedy. And so like you have that, but you have a lot of people that rely on using the image of Hitler for edgy points, for look at how transgressive I am points. And if that's the reason that you're reaching for it, it's cringe. Just as much as it's cringe if you try to use Nazis to shortcut, that's a bad guy. And I don't care if it's in real life where you're accusing people of being Nazis or if you're putting it in your book as a shortcut to say these are the bad guys. That's more than I want to say. Anyway, it starts out with the setting. Quote, "The color red infested the landscape, and the red smothered the yellow in the sun and the sky. Two almost identical looking men were trudging through the scorching desert. They could feel the acidic heat liquefying their skin beneath their uniforms, weeping from their pores and blisters while steam crawled over it like gauze spiders, and beneath the suffocatingly tight collar, the blood vessels in their necks bulged to breathe. They sweat from the inside as well as the outside. The salty wetness ran from the neck down the shoulders, into the sleeves, into the white ribbons around the upper left arm, and darkened the red of the swastikas on them, staining them as bloody as the sky. She should be over the next hill," the older said to the younger, staring at him with piercing eyes. "You said that before the last hill, and the one before that," the younger one said, pointing out that the dust in the wind had lodged in his partner's blonde hair, giving it a brownish tint that he found absolutely disgusting and shameful. "What are you implying?" the man asked, frowning. The younger didn't answer, but he turned his head to watch a flock of centipedes fly by in the distance. "Incompetent fool," he said to himself. So already we notice a couple of things. Number one, it over-exaggerated the sweating, which you're going to notice sometimes if you read some of these books, that it focuses on the wrong details to go on and on and on about, and at times it just feels like it's trying to break apart the dialogue. And also, it kind of, that's got some Grady Hendrix vibes to it too, where he over focuses on the wrong details in order to try to make it creepy or weirdo or horror. And it's just like, we just had a paragraph about how your sweat is wetting your clothing. I don't know. It doesn't tickle me at all. The setting also has the focus on the blood, the swastikas, the disgust of the brown hair imperfection, even if it's just a sheen and a flock of flying centipedes. So you know that we're going to be in for a weirdo here. It also started off very quickly to give you the vibes of disgust that we're going to be following this, and the image of the ideal is going to be something that is hit home again and again and again in this, is the perfection. The two of them travel from an empty train station to a distance in search of something or someone. This would be a sort of like the White Rabbit in Alice in Wonderland, because they're looking for somebody imperfect. They're chasing somebody imperfect, whom they never see, by the way. They run into no one during all of these travels, and it's been hours, and they have to keep going through the desert. I was starting to really feel like this was, like the Flames of Lethe, but wandering through the desert forever happened probably for like at least a quarter of the novel of Flames of Lethe, and it was annoying. The further they go, one of them mentions as having eyes that go from blue to red, and they reach some township. Quote, "The swarm of centipedes was still buzzing about eagerly, floating in the distance like a tornado. Maybe they were scorpion flies. Possibly some of them were on the back of their necks, landed and injected poison into their brains, making their train of thoughts stutter and falter. At the top of the hill, they found just another stretch of desert stretching to the mountain range in the distance. There were also purple bushes and cacti that seemed carved out of steel. The sky reflected off the sand, looking bright red like a Martian landscape. No sign of city or any living thing. Silent like a painting. There's no town here," said the younger man, sending a smugly mean look at his superior's direction. The younger one wants to get the older one in trouble, to get the older one shot so that he can get the older one's position. So he's wondering if he can report him for this. They review their destination together, like where they have landed. Quote, "If the city wasn't in the middle of nowhere," the older officer explained, "he wouldn't be hiding there. Completely cut off from the rest of the world," the younger officer muttered to himself as he trotted down the slope. "Yes, and people here are free to do whatever they want." "Impossible," the younger man shouted. "It's illegal," the older man agreed. "It's despicably illegal." Then why hasn't anyone put a stop to this activity? Don't ask me that, the older man shrugged wearily. Ask the Führer that. The younger one snapped his gaze back down the path and continued. How is our society supposed to achieve absolute perfection when whole cities are crammed into it? Revoke. It's just a place, said the senior officer. A whole world of stability will soon bury this place in arbitrariness. Let evolution do its job and eliminate the weak. It's still a disgusting thought. They continue forward and reach a small model city. Quote, it wasn't really a city, more like what a puppet would consider a town, about as high as her waist, about 10 meters wide and 15 meters long. What do you think that is? The younger man asked, taking a step into the miniature city and crunching his foot onto the gray foam road. Beside him stretched a row of cardboard houses, spray-painted white, red, and tan. I'm not sure what it keeps referring to as her at this point, and then it's as I went further along, it was just like random pronouns thrown out here, there, and everywhere, and they didn't make sense even for who it was referring to. Like there were times when Adolf is referred to as her, or when Adolf's wife is referred to as him. The stairs slash the house are referred to as her. So it ended up not looking like it was done deliberately for the insanity, and more looked like it was a first draft that was sloppy and then not even reviewed and then just thrown up. So I actually got annoyed with it. I gave it the benefit of the doubt from the beginning because I didn't want to think the worst of the author would like, oh, you just didn't care. But as I went on, I was like, did you really do this? I cannot excuse it. I can't excuse an author for freaking not caring. The little city model doesn't mean anything. Quote, it's a kind of model, said the older one who was waiting at the edge. Probably a replica of the city that we're looking for. The younger officer seemed disappointed, although this model proved that civilization must be nearby. One of the local kids must have made them, he said. Excellent craftsmanship for a kid. The younger man shook his head. I find it scary. He took a few more steps down the small street, crushing cardboard and uprooting trees along the side of the road. The city must be very close by, said the older man. As the older gentleman investigates the model city, he notices whoever made it doesn't pay attention to detail because the houses are all empty of people and furniture and just their blank slates. The younger man loses sight of the older man, can't explain where he went, and then ends up passing out. The younger man then wakes up in this dark place. His head is pounding and he's covered in the smell of alcohol and mess, and he feels the mess and he realizes that he's in a bar/inn. The only other person there is the barkeeper/innkeeper who greets him saying that this place is empty because most people are still in bed. The innkeeper also says, quote, Adolf, anything else to drink? This confuses the young soldier as he says that his name is not Adolf, but he tries to reach into his mind and remember what his name is to correct the bartender with it, and he can't remember what his name is. The innkeeper reiterates, isn't that your name? Adolf Hitler, it's on your uniform where your name tag is. And the young soldier says the name Adolf Hitler feels familiar, but he isn't certain that it is his name. The innkeeper is like, you sure? It has to be your name. You have Hitler facial hair. And he's like, what? How do you know what facial hair I have and that it's called a Hitler mustache? The innkeeper says, I've never heard of this Adolf Hitler guy, but I know everything about the Hitler mustache because my own son wore a Hitler mustache when he was a teenager. You know, that whole edgy thing, as teenagers do. The young soldier is even more confused now about how he could be Adolf Hitler and also have the facial hairstyle named after that guy despite being so young, because he is sure that Adolf Hitler was not this young, even though he's not really sure who Adolf Hitler is. And the innkeeper says, you must be older than you look. The young soldier is still confused and then lets the conversation drop for a second as he tries to recall anything about himself. He knows that he had a briefcase and an assignment, and maybe if he found that and looked at the orders that he was supposed to be doing, he'd remember something about himself, but he can't even find the briefcase that he was sure that he had. And he also is pretty sure that he had a partner, but he's not sure where the partner is, what they look like, what their name was, or anything about them. The innkeeper says that he's never seen this young man's uniform style before in his life, and he has never seen this guy's partner either, but he does have an explanation. Quote, the innkeeper looked sideways and his neck shifted like a piece of cloth. He nodded and grunted, frowning. A Daker spider must have taken him. A what? A Daker spider. This is a small animal with the ability to change the mass of its prey. It can shrink anything from the size of an elephant to the size of a dime, making any opponent the perfect victim. Your friend probably stood next to one, which then shrunk him to a helpless size and captured him before he even knew what was happening. You're not gonna tell me that my partner got eaten by a spider. This kind of thing happens all the time. The younger man just shook his head, his nerves rattling. The notion didn't seem scientifically plausible to him, but if such an absurd creature actually existed, then it could explain his partner's disappearance. It keeps saying innkeeper. Now, in the book, like I already mentioned, the random pronouns being thrown around. In this, it also keeps saying innkeeper, but it also looks like this guy might just be a barkeeper, that it didn't change it to barkeeper when they decided this guy was not an innkeeper, because the guy goes, oh, BT dubs, the person who owns the inn is over there. If you want a free space in the inn, then you go to him, and he'll usually offer you a free place if you have breakfast with him, because he's such a lonely guy. And so just have breakfast. He'll give you a room. I'm just the barkeeper, though, so I can't give you a room. So then it's like, why does the book keep saying innkeeper? Other than if it's the first iteration of the author's words and they never went back to change it, which happens a lot. I know too many people that refuse to revise their books, and I judge them for it, which is different than missing typos. The young soldier is told to go and talk to Mr. Rad, or Hair Rat, saying that that is the owner of the place. Now, there's another weird thing in the writing here where it says Mr. Rad instead of saying Hair Rad, just a sentence after saying Frau Adret. It later randomly switches to Hair Rad for like one or two sentences and then goes back to Mr. Rad, which is again why I'm like, did you not revise this? Did you not touch this? How are you going to go Frau Ardet and not Hair Rod? And then how do you switch between Hair Rod and Mr. Rod multiple times throughout the book? Just pick one and double check your name, because otherwise it looks like you're being lazy. This came out in 2007. How has it not been corrected yet? Whatever. I'm judging you for it. The innkeeper also recommends that the young soldier talk to Frau Ardet, as she knows everything and everyone in this town, and she can likely help him find his briefcase. He says that both can be found in the bakery next door. The young man thinks, quote, people in this town didn't seem to realize that eating outside the privacy of one's home was lewd. So he doesn't want to eat breakfast with Herod because it's not considered good manners, but he'll do it for a free room, probably, possibly. He is just conscious of it. He asks once more about the briefcase and is told, don't worry about it, it'll show up eventually. Nothing is ever permanently lost here. That feels like such a missed opportunity for this guy to say that, and that never comes up again. Like, I mean, the briefcase does come up later, but nothing is ever lost here feels like a good tie-in to the theme and what is happening with Adolf here, but we never actually use it in the plot or the theme. Anyway, so the soldier goes to the building outside and he finds it creepy. This is the inn building that Mr. Rod lives in, and it feels abandoned and looks bizarre. It is also at this point that I realized that the book is referring to the buildings as architecture, or at least I thought that until I saw the random pronouns later. So he tries to block the door open so that it won't shut on him, just in case it is a very dangerous place. But once he steps away from the door, the building basically unstops itself and the door shuts behind him. Without anything else to do, the soldier goes further into the house looking for anyone, but specifically looking for Herr Rod. He finds the old man whittling away in a room upstairs, and the first thing that the soldier says is, ugh, you're old. Surprised, because in the world that he is from, no one lives past the age of 50. The older man says, wow, that's a rude greeting, and then carries on. The soldier stands in utter disbelief at seeing this old man, while the old man says that he hasn't seen a man the soldier's age in a very, very long time, likely since he himself was a young man. The soldier thinks, quote, how can the world allow him to exist? Is he the imperfect man that I'm looking for? Could the annihilation of the single old man actually be the whole goal of my mission? You know, I kind of wish that every time he wondered, oh, is this the imperfect person that I'm supposed to kill? If Adolf had actually killed each and every one of them as he came across from them, and then still had that feeling in himself that, oh, I did not kill the imperfect one. I think that would have made it stronger to then tie into the theme. The old man offers the young soldier breakfast and to play chess if he's feeling up to it. And the soldier says he is just getting perpetually ill by looking at this old man. He is disgusting with his tagged skin, this freak of freaking nature, 50-year-old man. The old man asks the soldier if he's all right because he's looking kind of ill, and he calls him Adolf, and the soldier is thinking, maybe my name really is Adolf Hitler. Like, what else would it be? And the old man puts on his glasses to see the soldier better, and the soldier is like, at first, he thinks the guy put on lensless glasses, for the cool factor, but then he realizes that this freak also has broken eyeballs, and his eyeballs are imperfect, and he is not just old. Quote, "You're a freak," the young Adolf Hitler snarled at the man's disability. "Amtropia is no longer allowed in our society. You are a history book that has missed its final chapter." The man responds with, "You are an unusual person." The soldier tells the old man that he's looking for someone dangerous with genes filled with disease that could get them killed and destroy all of the human population. The old man asks if it's him that the youth is looking for. Is he the imperfect person that the youth is looking for? And the soldier says, "No, I don't think that you are. I mean, like, you might be imperfect, but you're not dangerous." And now you're seeing, like, where it might be, every time this question comes up, maybe just have Adolf murder the person and then reflect on it later. Like, you'll see. And then I'd love to know your thoughts when we get to the end. As they stand there, a loud shriek fills the room. Herr Rod says that that's just Elsie, his daughter, who is dead, and now she is a ghost. He says that she has mood swings since becoming a ghost, and also she doesn't like being reminded that she's dead, so if you talk to her, don't tell her that she's dead, don't act like she's dead, don't acknowledge that she's dead. The soldier says, quote, "What's going on here? There is no order here. This place is so disorganized that it allows the dead to throw tantrums." The screaming eventually quiets down, and the soldier starts falling asleep as he's standing there. Herr Rod insists that the soldier stay the night and in one of the rooms upstairs, so he picks up the soldier and carries him up at least 9 flights of stairs to lay him in a very fluffy bed. Here we start with the description of said fluffy bed, but quickly it goes and destroys this idea of comfy. Quote, "They went upstairs to the 9th floor, the top one, and the old man laid young Adolf on a big fluffy bed. The aluminum door rumbled like thunder as it closed behind him. The Hitlerite man found his way into the musty sheets. They hadn't been washed in years. Dust rose from the bed and danced up in the faint light from the window. The bed was surrounded by webs and threads, but the young man took them for ordinary cobwebs. He thought it best not to think about the Dakar spider, although he thought that he knew for sure that such an animal was far too absurd to actually exist. It must be a local superstition, he thought. What a sad place that superstitions still exist. In his days, the young Hitler didn't care that the bedding stank of rancid meat and the room looked like a dark dungeon. He just wanted to sleep." Now, this reads like a mixture of intent and lol, so random, bet you didn't guess that was coming. And the rest of the book kind of feels like that too, where you have moments where it was like, this feels like it's trying to do something, but also almost all of the descriptions of anything just feel like the author went, how random can I be? You'll see. I skipped some of the descriptions, but you'll see, okay? Now Adolf realizes that he wasn't placed in the bed alone. Quote, "Next to the young Adolf Hitler lay a whale of a man on the pirate ship's sheet, snoring to himself. A fat man. Hitler could smell his sweaty bacon rolls, the stench seeping through the fabric and polluting the air. It was gross. Hitler sat up, stared at the man with a frown. Adolf tries desperately to wake the fat man up, even slapping him across the face, but the man will not wake up. His efforts are interrupted by a voice telling him that the man does not wake up. This is the ghost's daughter, Elsie. She greets him as Adolf Hitler again because his name tag says Adolf Hitler, and the officer says, "That's not who I am. Even if my badge says it, that's not me. My shirt also says God, but do you think that I'm God? I know that I'm not God, and I'm definitely not God, period, okay? Even though I don't know who I am, I know who I am not, and that is God and Adolf Hitler." Adolf says that he needs to sleep so that tomorrow he can find his briefcase, and then after that, find the man that he's looking for, and then finish his mission, and then go home and live, in glory. Elsie asks if the whale of a man laying next to him is the man that he's looking for, and Adolf says, quote, well, he's definitely imperfect, but his genes aren't wrong. Being overweight may be illegal, but he poses no threat to the purity of the human race. Is that him being like, this guy's not getting laid? Look, just off him. Just, it's time to kill Bill. It's time to fry that bacon. Let's go. Elsie, he's gonna fry that bacon later. Just start now. Elsie then expresses her frustration that everyone in town keeps saying that she's dead, but she is obviously not freaking dead, you guys. She has Adolf touch her. She feels cold and hard to his fingers, but she insists that she is not freaking dead. Don't you dare freaking say it. If I see one Elsie is dead in the comments, she's gonna haunt you. She's gonna visit you at night and chill your sleeping area. Quote, the whole town says I'm dead, but we both know that's not true. They are all terribly mistaken. Just because I can walk through walls doesn't mean that I'm dead. But people must think that you're a ghost just walking through walls in front of them, the officer said, trying to pull his hand away. Who do you tell that? The cockroach people scream hoots and hollers and murder every time I come through the walls. The cockroach people? His hands were numb against her cold skin. There are these little ones who live between the walls, half insect, half human. Between these walls? He gestured nervously with his free hand. Yes, between all walls. They are plagues of men. How disgusting, he commented. Elsie says come morning, she'll help Adolf look for his briefcase, but for now she needs to sleep. She climbs into bed with him, and this makes Adolf the most uncomfortable he's ever been because on one side, he's got fat, bacon, smelly McLardass over here, and on the other side, he's got the frozen girl turning his body into a popsicle. So, sweat, popsicle. He can't sleep with this and struggles for hours and hours and hours and hours and thinks that the night is going to end and then it doesn't. So he gets out of bed to lay on the floor and take a nap and falls asleep for just a wee little bit until he feels like a bang on the back of his head. And when he wakes up, he is bleeding. He is in a puddle of his own blood. He doesn't know who attacked him. The lard ass is still sleeping over there. Elsie is still in bed. So he gets up and goes to the bathroom. He kind of stalks around the floor until he finds the bathroom. And then when he does, he has to burst the door down because the door is locked. I'm assuming, I don't know how he's assuming that that door is a bathroom, but he is. And he gets, quote, high-pitched screeches assail him as he entered. Hundreds of insect creatures scurried across the floor and into the walls. The bright moon reflected blue paint off the brickwork and spread it across the carpet and bed. A skeleton slept on the bed. The officer peered into the chest and found dozens of faces staring at him, insect people hiding, shaking, and trembling at the sight of him, as if he was about to crush them. These disgusting creatures deserve to be trampled on, thought Hitler. They are hideous and should be eradicated like any other vermin. He rubbed his head wound, took a step back, turned, and found a sink against the wall. There was no separate bathroom here either, but there was at least a basin and a mirror. He unzipped his uniform trousers and urinated into the sink. The smell of the tiny people's dusty bones and excrement filled his nostrils and made him want to leave the room immediately, but he had to wash his head wound and wipe the dirt off of his face and hands. Why is it so hideous here? He asked the mirror. The blood had ruined his perfect blonde hair. His uniform was filthy and badly damaged. The mirror didn't answer. I came here to track down a single threat to the human race, but I have found a whole place of it. How can such a place exist? This little dirt bug girl actually comes out of the sink water faucet, lifts her dress, and starts doing a little dance for Adolf. He flicks her little body across the room in offense because that's not dancing. That's dirty and chaos, and dancing takes deliberate choice and training and skill, which is not what you're doing by showing your little dusty cockroach coochie, okay? The little cockroaches, all of the other little cockroach vermin people get mad at Hitler for attacking the little cockroach girl, and he breaks the mirror to find a room on the other side of the mirror. So he climbs through the mirror, goes to the other side, walks back up to his bedroom where Fatty McLard-ass Bacon Bits was sleeping with the ghost, and he sees two people laying in the bed still. So he walks over and he looks at the bodies in the bed, and he finds that they are not the ghost and Lardy McFatass, but they are actually paper dolls made out of newspaper that are not actually there. And as he's looking them over in the bed, a shadow creature springs at him, causing Adolf to run back to the mirror, through it, and to the other side. The shadow cannot follow him, does not follow him, and stays inside of the mirror. Now, Elsie comes running into the bathroom because she heard Adolf screaming and wanted to see what was wrong. After he tells her what he saw, she goes, "Well, yeah, of course you were attacked. You ventured too far into the walk-in mirror. That's territory of the mourning demons, and they hate being trespassed on." Adolf asks, quote, "Mourning demons? I've never heard of anything like this. I've never heard of walk-in mirrors either. You are unnatural. Mourning demons live in mirrors in places that you can't see, so behind furniture or corners. But I haven't seen them behind furniture. I went into the reflection through the door and up the stairs back to the room where they were hiding in the shadows. Yes, the room upstairs is beyond the reflection, so the mourning demons can live there. They live in their own world on the other side of the mirror. They don't care for intruders. It's against nature. Mirrors are meant to reflect beauty of men and not harbor the corruption of demons." But it's true. Very few people know about them because they can't look into their mirrors. And these mirrors here are three-dimensional, so it works. They were invented by the golden eel. Adolf is surprised that the city is run by a frickin' eel. And then he's not surprised because, of course, everything is run like garbage. It's run by a frickin' eel, quote. A memory flashed into his mind, one he worked at as a child. As a boy, he had worked in factories, and as a waiter, all children were forced to do the heavy, poorly paid labor. A century ago, the lower classes had done the menial work, and the children could play after school. But then the leader had all of the unclean people eliminated, which happened to include the entire underclass. This left only the children for the annoying and unwanted activities. All boys and girls between the ages of 5 and 17 were forced to do servile labor for 8 hours a day, attend school for an additional 8 hours, and try to juggle homework, chores, eating, and sleeping for the remaining 8 hours to get. This strengthened the character of young people. It created inner strength and a sense of responsibility, preparing them for a world beyond childhood, the world of efficiency and perfection. This is why this place made Hitler so sick. He had never experienced inefficiency before. He wasn't ready for this. All of this made him uncomfortable. Elsie asks Adolf to lay down with her until daytime comes. Adolf says that daytime should come anytime now because he knows that he has been trying to sleep for like freaking hours on an end. The sun should come up at any time. Elsie admits that she doesn't actually sleep, BT dubs. She just kind of lays there, closes her eyes, and pretends to sleep, but because she's a ghost, she doesn't need to sleep. She also tells Adolf that the sun only comes up when it feels like it and not on some fixed schedule, so it could like come up in 3 seconds or 3 years or 3 decades. It just depends on how the sun is feeling that day. Quote, "The sun moves randomly. In fact, it's probably been a few years since they last went down." What? You mean that I could be stuck that night for years? Forever? Possibly, but maybe only for a few more seconds. You never know. There are no rules for it. This place is despicable. Here, the sun is not even in the sky when it has to be there. Man relies on the regularity of the sun. One cannot rely on arbitrariness. Then Elsie reminds Adolf of his bleeding head and says that it was probably Mr. Eyebrows. He's a ghost that gets jealous of her boyfriends, and Hitler doesn't realize in that moment that she said boyfriend in referring to him. Elsie also asks Adolf again if he would lay down with her, and Adolf says no, he needs to find a different bed. He is not laying next to Ghost and Lardy McFat-ass bacon bits over there, okay? It's just not happening. Elsie says, well, that's too bad because all of the beds are occupied. Quote, by whom? From our other guests. From other guests? Are all of them ghosts? I only see ghosts. Are you calling me a ghost? I don't call anyone a ghost. Are you calling me a ghost? I just meant that this hotel reminds me of a graveyard. It is old and like death. Oh, that's because it's night. During the day, it is much livelier. The night is only shadows and old men. I do feel like I'm in an old man's world. There are no old men where I come from. We have outlawed them because they are no longer efficient at that age, and also because they are uncomfortable to be around. Do you think I'm pretty? Asked the ghost girl. Adolf says no, he doesn't. She's 17. She's too young. She should be working in the factory, BT dubs, and this sets her off, where she transforms into being one with the house, and the house is turned super cold, and from this, Adolf's skin becomes wrinkled, his muscles clench, and his body is freezing. So since he's obviously not going to bed, he goes to look around the house for something, an empty room, something. He eventually manages to find his way back to Herr Rod, who is still awake because old men never sleep. Fact check that on me. And Herr Rod is in a room with the little doors in his nipples open. You heard that right. He is in his little nipple doors, and he has got his screwdriver and his tweezers, and he is adjusting his heart in his chest, as you do when you are an old man. And this part actually reminded me of a story that was in the Hammerhead Wives. It was like my least favorite story that was in that book because it was the most predictable and boring, which it was like a little dude that lived inside the body of another dude, and it was like a clockwork body, and I was like, this feels the most generic out of everything in this book. Anyway, Herod's nipple doors. Adolf says, oh, so this is what it's like to be an old man, forced to fix yourself like a car engine. You're disgusting. Now we know why all dudes know how to fix cars. Again, the more you know. Adolf asks if Herr Rod has another bed that he can use, because he says the one that he was put in is being occupied by Lardy McFadass and Elsie. And then Herr Rod is like, you know what? I forgot that I put Lardy McFadass in there. My bad. But there are not any other beds. Would you like to play chess while we wait for maybe a bed to open up for you? Because I got chess pieces, girl. And Adolf says no. But he makes the mistake of sitting down, which tells Herr Rod that yes, he will play chess. So then Herr Rod gets out all of his little chess pieces, which are, quote, the figures turned out to be individual lumps of rubbery flesh and sinew. All farmers ended up in wet sheep eyes. The king was a big chunk of greasy steak. The queen a cat paw covered in rose thorns. The bishop looked like a severed penis, erect and bleeding, while the jumpers resembled a horse-shaped vagina. But the tower was the strangest figure of all. 4 fingers held together by teeth growing from the tip. And at the foot of the figure there seemed to be a sweaty mouth breathing and licking itself. The pieces also froth and foam on the board. BT Dub, he kind of moves one of them, and it's just like... And Adolf is like, I can't do this. I'm not doing this. No. Quote, even chess, the most symmetrical and perfect game ever invented, is ruined in this horrible place. While sitting here, Adolf also learns that Lardy McFadass upstairs is actually the city doctor, the town doctor, and he's like... How can that man be a doctor? He is so fucking fat. Like, oh my gosh. And he says that he is going to go back upstairs, and he is called Adolf Hitler again, which he insists is not his name. He warns again, he is warned again about the Dacre spiders, who also have the ability to steal your memories of potential prey in order to disorient them before they eat them and kill them. Adolf complains about this place being so twisted that the bugs are at the top of the food chain when they should be under his boot like every other vermin. He insists on returning to his room while the old man mocks him, quote, are you afraid of losing chess to me? Maybe he just doesn't want his tower to eat his finger and to touch a dick piece, whatever piece that was. I don't remember. Anyway, the old man's like, fine, but watch out. Watch out for the spiders. They love to attack people while they're sleeping, you know. And your room is full of cobwebs, so it's probably spiders in there. I'm just saying. But let's be real. This would not be the first thing that attacks him in sleeping. It was actually more surprising that he was attacked by a ghost's jealous non-boyfriend than spiders first when laying on the ground. So he goes upstairs and he hears crying, which draws him to a room with a perfect-looking naked woman. She's got blonde hair, the perfect blonde hair. He calls her the perfect woman, and he recognizes this woman, but he is not sure who she is. She draws him into her on the bed, and then, you know, they're getting busy. She pulls him into her in a marital way. Then she is literally sinking into the mattress, sinking into all of the blankets, shrinking. As you can imagine, what has happened since we have been introduced to a creature that can shrink you. And as they are, you know, doing the do, she sinks into the blankets. And then he starts sinking into the blankets, and he starts looking for her in the blankets and is just throwing them everywhere, and he can't find them. And then he ends up underneath the bed, looking at some socks, looking for this perfect woman, realizing that he has shrunk. And then he gets chased by a spider. He's running from this spider as it chases him down until he finds his blonde woman from before and asks her who she is, because he needs to remember who he is. And maybe if she knows who she is and she knows who he is, then she can remind him and he'll remember the mission that he is supposed to be doing. I mean, he knows the mission he's supposed to be doing. It's finding the imperfect person, but he doesn't know who that imperfect person is. She informs him that he is Adolf Hitler, but she does not tell him who she is because she doesn't know who she is. The two of them are then traveling, looking for an escape from the Daker spider before it can catch them. Adolf admires all of the things that he can now see because he is tiny, and he's pretty sure that he can see all of these microscopic things because he is too microscopic, and so obviously it's all visible now. Then there is a hole in the wall at the end of the room that the woman leads them to, and inside of that room there are more cobwebs, and Fatty McLardass from upstairs is actually captured in spider webs, wrapped up and brought here to be eaten later. Probably tastes like bacon considering what he smells like. Let's be real. They keep on going until they find the end of the tunnel, and on the other side of the room, and the other side of that tunnel, there is a big sludge pile of nasty. It's like green pus stuff. The two of them watch two men come out of somewhere dragging a naked woman with them who they throw into the sludge pile. It consumes her. They describe it as the pile of bad knowledge. Adolf acknowledges that the man with the better mustache of the two is probably the one in charge, and then starts questioning him about what is going on. What do you mean bad knowledge? What even is bad knowledge? Is there even such a thing as bad knowledge? We get Adolf going, quote, "Bad knowledge? What's bad about knowledge?" "The goddess says knowledge is evil," he replied. "Nonsense!" exclaimed Adolf. "Inefficiency and imperfection are evil. One would be imperfect without knowledge." "Don't you think that lump of poison is pure evil?" asked the man with the mustache. "No," said Adolf. "He doesn't have the characteristics of evil, but I don't see what that has to do with knowledge." The men in the toadskin robes shifted their feet and said, "The goddess says that this lump of slime was once a collection of thoughts so intelligent that they condensed into matter, and given its ugliness, she concluded that intelligence must be something ugly. A culture without intelligence is something ugly," Adolf said to them. "Your goddess is profoundly mistaken." Obviously, the two men are incredibly offended, and they're like, you need to shut your mouth before we push you into the pile of freaking bad knowledge, you son of a bitch." Adolf also says, "I am obviously a perfect man. I'm having an imperfect moment right now, and someday I will be perfect again, but, I'm struggling, okay? I'm on the struggle bus right now." He also tells them that God is perfect, and a goddess would be a female version of a god. And the two men think that he is crazy and says that if he is not careful, they really will throw him into the pile of knowledge. He is blaspheming right now. The two of them agree that before they throw him into the pile, though, they will take him to the goddess, and the goddess can make the decision of what to do with Adolf. When they reach the colony, the goddess is actually the corpse of the ghost girl's mother, and all of these like little people are living inside of the corpse of this woman. They're just miniature people. And Adolf says, she's dead. And they go, quote, "She isn't. She's a skeleton, but she definitely is alive in spirit." "Your culture is unnatural," said Hitler. "No, she isn't," the man with the mustache called out. "Your muddled mind has it all wrong. The endurers have a college contrary to nature." "The endurers?" asked Hitler's perfect wife. "What makes them unnatural?" "You're bad," said the man with the mustache. "The ultimate evil." "You're intelligent, aren't you?" asked Hitler. "I bet you think they're the ultimate evil because they're geniuses. They're probably smart enough to know how to restore my memory and my full size." "The culture of the sufferers is unnatural," proclaimed the man with the mustache. "That may be so, but no more than your culture," said Hitler. "If you really feel that way, we must send you to them at once," said the man with the mustache. "Otherwise you will insult the goddess, and she must banish you to the pile of bad knowledge." So then they return to the room where the pile of knowledge was, and it's gone, replaced instead with concrete statues of angels and a hole in the ground. Adolf is very confused as to where the pile went and how these angels and the hole got here, and Mustache Man is like, quote, "Yes, the size of our living space is so small that we have to keep many rooms in the same place. You just push a button on the door and whoosh, one room becomes another." "How does that work?" asked Adolf. "If we had that kind of knowledge, it would have far-reaching consequences," the man with the mustache replied. "The endurers created the system long ago when they were still here with us. Only they know how it works. We just know how to use it, and that's enough for us." Adolf is reassured that they just need to go into the hole and they won't die because the endurers who created the hole also made it so you slow down when you go through the hole and you always land on your feet, so there's no worry about dying. And Adolf is just like, geniuses. They obviously are freaking geniuses, and this is amazing. And the mustache is like, no, the endurers are a plague on the world, which I thought he was just singing the praises of the freaking endurers, but here we go with the inconsistencies again. Adolf and his perfect lady friend jump into the hole, and they are falling for a while, and again, Adolf is thinking about who he may or may not be. Quote, or is it? Am I really the one that they call Hitler? No, Hitler is certainly a great man who would never jump into a dark hole like I do. It must be a great king of a man because his name is next to God on my uniform. I am very sure that God embodies the most perfect being in the universe. So is that Hitler? Second most perfect? Conceivable. I am not sure. I'm just sure that I am not him. But what about this woman? She must be a figment of my imagination. Or I'm living in my subconscious right now, and this woman is part of it, a fantasy of memory. She knows nothing of my past because she is an outgrow of my current faulty brain. As he continues to fall, he eventually loses track of time, loses track of the woman that he was falling with, and then he starts talking to the darkness. Quote, the bottom of the pit may have disappeared, said the darkness. That's impossible, said Adolf. He had hardly spoken the words when her feet landed gently on the solid ground. And now? Asked the darkness. I'm not sure, Adolf replied. We can't see if there is anything here or not. The darkness is endless. Perhaps these sufferers live in the darkness, the darkness suggested. That would be absurd, said Adolf. If they are men of science, they will live in culture and not darkness. What is culture? Asked the darkness. Culture is civilization devoid of any imperfection. They all died, and we are alone in the dark world. I fear your logic, but it may be correct. In that case, we would be trapped and lost. Then we will most likely die. We must grope for food, the darkness suggested. We could survive that way. The woman searched the ground around her with her hands. There is no value in surviving in a world of darkness, said Adolf. At this point, it's obvious that it's calling the woman that he is with the darkness, which is also a stupid narrative choice because it just adds to this confusion when we're already doing Alice in Wonderland, and I have to go, is that embodiment of darkness the actual darkness, or is it the perfect woman he's with? It's the perfect woman that he's with. He just is saying it's the darkness. And so then since they've hit the ground, she's like touching around, trying to find food, trying to find anything. She finds a lever, it opens a door, and they go out. Now they go into this endless undergrowth of mushrooms and wilderness and weird things. And Adolf wants to find civilization as fast as possible because non-civilization is hell. And also civilization should help him try to get back to where he came from. And we get this description, quote, purple grass? Grass shouldn't be purple. What crazy kind of grass grows purple instead of green? And is that a square rose? Flowers cannot be square. And what about that tree over there that has tennis shoes growing instead of fruit? Shoes are made in factories. They can't grow from trees. Why are you wearing a pair of these? I smell something wormy. Worm-eaten isn't even a real smell. What about these boulders? They look like huge collections of marbles. And why, oh why, is that waterfall of marshmallows shooting out of that mountain face? So they see someone over at the waterfall of marshmallows collecting them in a bucket of some kind, and they approach this guy. When the man turns around, it appears that he has no nose. He may be of Russian descent. You're a G if you get that reference. You're a double G if you get that the G is for Gogol. It turns out that it is not marshmallows coming from that mountain head. It is lard. And he is straight up drinking it. And Adolf is like, stop. That is friggin' disgusting. I don't want to watch you eat that. Eat that when I am not here, please and thank you. The man is like, okay, and then just packs up some lard to go home with. Adolf asks the man to show him to civilization, and the dude agrees. Then the noteless dude warns him that the town is full of crazy geniuses, so he should be prepared. Quote, crazy? How terrible. I got the impression that they must be intelligent people. You're intelligent too, said the noseless man. Some very, very brilliant minds live there. But you said that they were crazy. Yes, they are crazy too. But they can't possibly be intelligent if they're also crazy. Well, these people are. They're crazy, but they're crazy geniuses. You know that's the greatest geniuses are usually eccentric, right? No. replied Adolf. That's absurd. A madman cannot possibly be a genius. A genius is someone who has a great intelligence, acts efficiently, and is also of perfect sanity. Madness and insanity are great imperfections, such as genius never possesses. Adolf then says that he is looking for an imperfect man and asks the noseless guy if he has seen an imperfect man. The noseless guy is like, imperfect in what way exactly? And Adolf says, quote, I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly what constitutes a man's imperfection, but I don't think that a man missing a nose can be important enough for someone of my stature to go and look into. The one that I'm after has impure genes. Well, there's a good chance that your husband is down here. The Dacker spider shrinks quite a few people who normally escape into this underworld before the spider gets him. Now, I don't know what the frick it's talking about with husband here, because it's talking to Adolf. We never run into whatever that is. So again, it's either a typo or it's some hidden message that I don't freaking know. But considering the rest of the typos in this book, I don't trust this author. You don't want to burn me so bad that I'm like, Perfect Woman is not happy about this alliance with the noseless guy and kind of just stares at him, but she doesn't really have a choice. The noseless guy introduces himself as Roger Eyebrows. I'm wondering if that means that this is also the ex-boyfriend who gets jealous about everything with the ghost, because otherwise, why do we have two eyebrows in one story that are not on your face? Also, there is this plant with fingers instead of thorns, and it is beckoning Adolf. It is like a passerby sentence that is introduced as they're just walking by. I told you, all of the descriptions are just like random for the point of being random, not to do anything. Mr. Roger Eyebrow leads them to this place filled with red clay, and Adolf is like, where is the civilization that you promised? Roger says that he has to turn it on first, and Adolf is confused. Roger says, because the golden eel likes to have complete control over everything, and so he gave society an on-off switch so that he can turn it off whenever he wants to. Then Roger hits the button and everything comes alive. Quote, the city exploded in sight, a cluster of spikes and structures with black buildings like cacti, dark and crude, rising, squeaking out of the mud. All around them, men would appear, walking, talking, and working as if they had no idea that they had just outgrown the ground. They hurried by in mud-stained suits. Many of them had their hideous deformities. Some had 3 eyes, others had shark fin heads, crab claw hands, demon tails, bubbling frog bellies, eagle feathers, or porcupine hair. Some of them wore fur suits, others black leather with spiked collars. A whole city of freaks! Adolf yelled at the city full of freaks. The Perfect Woman shared his opinion. Who would have thought that we would have had Carlton Mellick III crossover with Crow Collar's book about the angels? Because it sounds like the Angel Demon School. Am I right? Those of you who have read that or watched that review. Quote, Adolf stepped onto the pavement path and stared up at the burned rubber skyscraper with their whispering watermills dangling from balconies, the glassless panes and the scorpion tendrils crawling in and out of buildings. Huge beetles sped along the streets and automobiles. Adolf's face contorted at the sight, which seemed so complex and chaotic, alive and yet sick. Distorted people walked around in strange ways, imperfect people. But they were not like humans with imperfect genes, which Adolf professionally tracked down to earn his living. These creatures could hardly be considered human beings. In fact, they should have been called demi-humans, or less than humans, or anti-humans. He is informed that his wife must be kept on a leash while in town, though he doesn't see any other women on leashes, though he kind of doesn't really see any other women, period. The perfect wife protests, and Adolf says he doesn't want to break the law while they're visiting, so he'll do it, but they need to get back to the surface. So he's only doing it so that they can get the frick out of here, right? They make their way to the pet store, as it's the only place that you can register your wife and get a leash. And in the pet store, Adolf takes note of the collection. Quote, the parrot had peachy plumage and a head and the breasts of a human female. Young Adolf examined all of the animals in the shop. Each seemed to be some kind of animal female mutation. There was a woman cat with fur and claws that lashed out at a dead woman mouse, a woman goldfish in a giant water glass, breathing through gills in her slender pale throat, and even a woman with floppy ears and a wet nose. The pet owner proudly surveyed his inventory while rubbing the black and white hairs on his chin. Adolf walked toward him and discovered that he recognized the man's face. It was Herr Rod, the owner of the inn, which it actually was not. Quote, I'm Herr Lied, the owner of the pet shop, introduced himself. I'm the owner of the pet shop. Then I'm wrong, said Adolf. You look exactly like the man named Herr Rod. It's probably because you're both old, and I'm not used to old people. They all look the same. Mr. Song grinned crookedly and then smirked. Well, if that isn't the rudest greeting that I've ever heard, who may you be? So, Lied is German for song. So there we have another inconsistency and or typing issue where it is Herr Lied and then Herr Song, and then the rest of the time it's Herr Lied, or it switches back and forth randomly. You need to pick one. They go to register the perfect woman, but she doesn't remember her name, and so Adolf gives her the name Muss. Then they're asked when they got married, and Adolf doesn't know when they got married. The lady doesn't know when they got married, and so then the pet shop owner is like, wait, you're not married? Well, you need to get married, or you're going to need to euthanize this woman, like, tonight. Your choices are marriage now or euthanization tonight. And he's like, okay, we'll get married at once. And the man says, all right, you can marry tonight at the celebration for Emperor Golden Eel. And then Adolf asks where he might find Frau Adrit. Adrit is supposed to be with a priest over the bridge. So Adolf goes off to find the bridge. As him and the perfect woman travel, they end up at a tavern and pass by some literal bugmen. And Adolf says that this place is making him crazy, and he would complain about it if they weren't being watched so close by all of the freaks. Quote, people here are supposed to be geniuses, but I see nothing genius in these monstrosities. I see more imperfections than my eyes can handle. They may be imperfect, but they are nonetheless human beings. Nonsense, said Adolf, clenching his fist. Human beings strive to be efficient and to control their environment, but I have no control here. My surroundings are driving me insane. You'll get used to it eventually. That's exactly what I'm afraid of. As soon as this chaos no longer affects me, I belong. Then I will also be one of these monstrosities, absurd and without control, and I will be ugly, wear the dirt on my skin and my uniform, and worship a grotesque eel as a god. She says that things will be fine once they get married, but he is not so sure that is the truth. He goes over everything that he needs to do and how it fits together. And how it all fits together. He then finds out where the eel probably lives from the barkeeper there, and is told how disgusting it is that Adolf has brought his wife, his lady, into the bar because they're not allowed in these buildings, okay? So he needs to get her outside. Quote, you must take it outside. Why is that? Adolf said. Pets aren't allowed here, he said, pointing to Muss. I keep a decent house here. My guests don't want to find hair and fleas on their tables and chairs. It's absurd, but I defer to your authority. Women are filthy creatures. You should see them right away put down for you after their first litter. They leave the bar after he finishes his drink and notice that the streets are entirely empty. There are no people anywhere, and the path seems to go on forever. They eventually reach the high priest's house, and it's like this floating house that's on a string, and he tells the perfect woman to stay outside while he climbs inside to go and talk to the priest. When he gets inside, he runs into the noseless man, who is like, yeah, didn't I tell you I'm the high priest? You're welcome. Anyway, so where is your wife? And Adolf says he left her outside, and the high priest is like, you shouldn't do that because you're either gonna have her taken away, she's gonna be euthanized, or she's gonna run off. And Adolf is like, no, she's not gonna run off. And Noseless Guy is like, you have her trained that well, she won't run off? Good for you, sport. He's then told where he can find Frau Ardet in the house and then goes to her room. He calls out to her once he gets there, but she's not coming, so he kind of keeps walking around. There's a large terrarium in the room, so he walks to that while he's like, Frau Ardet, where are you? And you get, quote, he went to the terrarium. There was a turtle in the glass container. Something was wrong with her. The turtle's carapace wasn't shaped the way that he found normal. The turtle shell was different, deformed. It resembled a turtle shell in color and pattern, but its shape was more like that of a wheeled race car, and all that entails. He calls out once more and, quote, she must have been sleeping. He knocked again, and her human head popped out, a wrinkled, tiny, bald human head. Her human feet slid through the race car wheels, and she yawned. How do you even imagine any of this? Like, not how do you imagine it to write it down? How are you supposed to imagine it to look at? Anyway, yes, the weird turtle car is Frau Ardet, and he says that, and Adolf tells her that he is looking for an imperfect man, and she is like, imperfect? In what way? Quote, I don't know exactly. I can't remember his face, but it's imperfect. He's a plague, and I'm here to rid society of him. He led me into this world of diseased genes and anti-normality. They said that you would help me. I'm just a tortoise, said the tortoise. People rarely cross my path, and even if I had seen the man that you're looking for, defining him as imperfect still gives me no idea by him. All humans are imperfect. You must describe him to me. I may have seen him. See, you know how many problems would have been solved if Adolf just killed every one of these people as he met them and was like, I'm looking for imperfection. You don't have a nose. You're a turtle. You're a fatty McLard ass that smells like bacon. Like, he could be creating. I know it's probably a sketchy joke to make, considering what is to my left, but think about it. So she mentions the briefcase may have gotten up and wandered away into the land of living inanimate objects, as if you needed more. What is going on? So he might want to go and look for the world of inanimate objects that are alive and would find it there. She also insists that he and his wife should stay here with the high priest, because if you stay in town, you're going to be in a bigger danger. And she can't describe the danger, but she just knows you will be in bigger trouble if you try to go there. People go missing there all the time. And Adolf is like, yeah, that's not freaking surprising, considering the entire town is just freaking chaos. Of course people go missing all the time. Frau Ardet then demands that Adolf and his wife stay. The noseless priest tells Adolf that he needs to change his clothes because he can't wear black to his wedding. That is bad luck. And Adolf is like, it is only freaking primitives that believe in good and bad luck. I cannot believe this. And the high priest continues to be like, change your clothes. Here is basically a yellow raincoat to wear. And so Adolf puts on the yellow robes over his black outfit. And, you know, the high priest doesn't like that he's still wearing the black underneath the raincoat, but he's like, I'm not going to bother you about this. What the frick ever. And then he's like, and then make sure that your wife gets naked. And Adolf is like, excuse me? And the dude is like, yeah, women should be naked in public. And Adolf is like, quote, it is detrimental to a woman's dignity to display her naked body in public. I find it quite ridiculous that a man of your age should treat his wife like a human being. She is a human being, Adolf said. The noseless man laughed out loud. Don't spread the word. They leave the house and make their way towards the ceremony, and Adolf calls his wife, Mus, to come to him. The noseless continues just like, bruh, that is not going to work. She is ill-trained. She is a woman. She is not going to listen to you. Women don't obey when they're treated as equals. And Adolf calls for her again to come to her, but her expression betrays that she is both drowsy and absent-minded, is how it's described. So drugged, it sounds like. And then Noseless snaps at her, and she comes to Adolf before they walk off. As they go, Noseless says that the air is made of artificial chemicals designed by the golden eel, and Adolf is like, You mean that we're being drugged all the time? Is this why I'm going crazy? Quote, when they finally entered the city, Adolf felt like he was breathing through his pores, through his eyeballs, through his ears, through his toenails, through his fingernails, through his hair, and through his privates, as if he were made up of a collection of lungs, those given a human form. At the ceremony, the wedding ceremony, the big ceremony, I'm assuming it's not the ceremony for the golden eel. They have that later. But at the wedding ceremony situation, the noseless walks off and comes back with this creature that I feel has to have been an inspiration for Gretchen Felker Martin. Quote, when the noseless man returned, he was not alone. Mud covered his sleeves, his hands clasped in a knot. Next to Adolf was a large warthog, snorted and licked his snot-smeared nose with a thick gray tongue. Its smell was like the diarrhea of a deceased ostrich, and on Adolf's other side stood a black hairy creature that appeared to be a cross between an obese tarantula and a huge deformed vagina with 5 cattails instead of arms. Both horrible, smelly creatures that Adolf felt should be forbidden to come within a kilometer of him, but Adolf decided to move a little closer to the warthog man because he bore at least some resemblance to a human being. Adolf turned a little so that he could turn his backside to the tarantula vagina. The warthog man saw Adolf getting closer and grunted. Before he had a chance to think better, Adolf opened his mouth and spoke to him. That doesn't really go very well. After this brief introduction to Warthog, the ceremony begins and the noseless introduces everybody to the rules of the ceremony. It's Hunger Games meets Gretchen Felker Martin, okay? Quote, dear bridegrooms, today you will profess the tribulation called marriage. On behalf of all the residents of city, we congratulate you on this sacrifice. So disgusting as it may be, marriage is important to our civilization. Without marriage, there would be no way for our species to proliferate. You are heroes, every single one of you. Your suffering ensures a future for our people. As tradition dictates, we recommend euthanizing your wife after the first litter. With our current technologies, women are no longer needed in the infancy stages after childbirth, and it would be just cruel to the children to keep the woman with them. As we know, children often become very attached to their mothers because they don't know any better. You should not let her. So please, schedule the woman right after the birth. The noseless priest motioned to a group of red-robed lobstermen who approached a row of crates full of pet collars. The ceremony proceeds as follows. Each of you gets a collar. This is your wedding ring. As soon as you put the wedding ring on your wife, you are bound by the bonds of marriage. But first, you must find your wife. All of the brides are hidden in this field. Once you have found your wife, you put the wedding ring around her neck and mate with her. After that, there is no turning back. After mating, you are legally required to remain married to your wife until she is at least littered. If your wife proves unable to give birth, you may exchange her for a new one. Following the ceremony, there will be a feast and celebration in honor of you brave men. As you all know, it is traditional for one of the brides to be served as the main course of the feast. The dinner bride, as we call her, is always the last woman to be married. The dinner bride's groom is dishonored and sent home. So if you don't want to be known as the traitor and a coward, you better not be the last one to find your wife. So begins the search for Adolf, and he can't find his wife in the field. He eventually runs into the pigman later, who is still looking for his wife, and Adolf realizes he still has time to find his wife because all of this time he's hearing all of this copulation happening around him, running into moist leaves with what you can imagine what is on the moist plants. And so finding the pigman still looking for his wife, he's like, hell yeah, I can still do this. He keeps going, and it turns out that he runs into the pigman's wife, who is also a pig, and she is begging him to save her. Quote, Adolf heard snorts and squeaks behind him as he jumped after his collar and over a hedge onto the lap of a huge ball of bacon. It wasn't a ball of bacon, but a naked woman. A pig woman. She had caught Adolf's collar as it flew over the hedge and thanked heaven as the younger man landed on top of her. She waited for Adolf to put the collar on her, kissed his neck with her wet muzzle, and rubbed her 6 breasts on his shoulders. She was huge, twice the size of Mus. He tells the bacon chick that he is going to help her, and then when he gets the chance, because she's like waiting for him to put the collar on her, he snaps her neck. Then he goes off to find his wife, does find his wife, they have sex in the field, and quote, when Adolf came, his brain turned into a metallic liquid that rushed through his lungs and dripped from his nipples into Muss's mouth. His thoughts floated down her throat as their bodies pressed together as tightly together as they could.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer? Every night, I can feel my leg and my arm, even my fingers. The body I've lost. The comrades I've lost.
When he wakes up, he's back at the noseless priest's house, flying house, whatever, holding his wife, and he realizes that she's cold, and he learns that this is not the perfect woman. This is freaking Elsie, the ghost, and she says that she tricked him because this was the only way that she knew how to get him to marry her. And while talking to the ghost, he notices this creature laying in the bed where his perfect wife was supposed to be. Quote, in order to transform myself into your perfect wife, I had to possess a manti melon. It's a creature that could be described as a cross between a praying mantis and a chameleon. Adolf studied the sleeping creature more closely. She bore a close resemblance to a mantis in the form of a woman, but was the size of a gorilla and covered with long tufts of black hair. It's a monster, said Adolf to the ghost girl. It's safe for now, said the ghost girl. It sleeps. It's against nature, said Adolf. But if it wakes up, it'll be dangerous. Humans are one of the main food sources for mantielians. Along with deers, cattle, and large dogs, they have the ability to change their physical appearance to look like their prey's perfect mate. And then turns out that since the ceremony, that thing has had 2 children because turns out every time that creature has sex, it gets pregnant and gives birth within hours. And then after giving birth, those babies like hyper mature. So they're already like little kids, and it'll be just a couple of hours before they are adults. And they're very excited to meet Adolf. And Adolf is like, what the hell is this? So Adolf runs out of the room and locks the kids in the room behind him. All of them are monsters. He goes into the living room and is told that he needs to bond with his children over breakfast. So they sit down at the table that, the ghost over there is cooking. Adolf is like, this is freaking dumb. But then he's eating what is served to him and is surprised that he actually likes it. Quote, the kids turn into, then you have the kids with their own food. And it says, quote, the kids turned into hot dogs before eating their hot dogs. Adolf's jaw dropped, but Elsie just smiled from her chair like it was the cutest thing, because they turn into the perfect mate. I would think that a perfect mate for a hot dog would be French fries. Elsie says that they need to get her registered ASAP so they don't put her to sleep. And Adolf is like, no, why don't you go yourself? And she's like, I can't. They'll put me to sleep. And so then Adolf is like, fine, we can go together even though I don't want to marry you. And she's like, thank you, which makes the whole thing of him saying no pointless because why did he say no if he was going to go along with it anyway? It doesn't really matter. They leave the kids at home, and the hot dogs' children cry and wail as the parents leave because they don't want to be left home. Whatever. Who would have thought wailing hot dogs would have been in the thing today? The streets are filled with yellow vomit as people keep vomiting for some reason. No reason at all. It's just a slip and slide in the streets of yellow vomit. Warthog guy approaches Adolf and grabs his wife and snaps her neck to kill her because he's like, you killed my wife. Now I kill your wife. So then the ghost comes out of that thing's body. And so then Warthog guy grabs the ghost and snaps her neck. But then she just resets because she's a ghost. So he can't kill her. And so then Warthog guy is like, fine, I won't kill your wife since I can't kill your wife. I'm going to freaking kill you. And so then Warthog and Adolf start fighting. And then they realize that they're both wearing SS uniforms. They're both Nazis. Warthog's uniform also says Adolf Hitler on it. And he is also here looking for an imperfect man to get rid of the world's plague of imperfection. And then they start arguing about the mission after they realize they're on the same mission. Quote, just like me, said Adolf to the Warthog Man. My mission is to find and destroy the last imperfect man. But you're so imperfect yourself, said the Warthog Man. How can a creature as absurd as you know anything about perfection? I, imperfect? I am the definition of perfection. See, again, like he's run into so many imperfect guys that he's just kind of let go that it would have made more sense if up to this point he'd been killing every last person that showed up that was imperfect. And he's like, you were not the one that I needed to kill, but it still fits the MO, right? Quote, no, I am the definition of perfection, said the Warthog Man. You are a nasty ogre of a man, said Adolf. You are a slight, bony elf of a man, said the Warthog. They both recall that they started out with a partner, got lost in the partner, maybe the world caused them to mutate into whatever it is that they are, and they still feel like they are the perfect one. After making sure that the body that Elsie had been using is actually dead, then they go and have a drink together to catch up. Warthog shares his own bizarre story of waking up here in this place that was just full of spider webs, in this little village that was like making silk things out of the spider webs, and there was like more to that. It didn't really matter though. He also met somebody there who was a cripple, and he told the cripple what he thought needed to happen to cripples, which was elimination, and then they sent him this way. He also says that the golden eel is taking people to mutate them, since the golden eel is a mad scientist. The golden eel is also having a ball tonight, but you need dates to go to the ball. So then they talk to the ghost girl, and she mentions that they could use Adolf's children, who are shapeshifters, to create the perfect appearances to then get into the ball. And so they're like, yeah, okay. And so then she's going to go home, prepare the kids to go on fake dates with Dad and Warthog. The ghost girl is going to go into one of the bodies of the children, and the other one is just going to be the child, because, you know, the ghost girl can inhibit people. And then they're going to go to the castle. As she goes to do that, Pigman and Adolf stay behind at the bar and just kind of keep talking. And they're talking about how weird this entire place is. Quote, I think it was created by nature, said the Pigman. Nature? The outside world is absolutely perfect, said the Warthog Man. In every way, she is total perfection, but the universe is all about balance, good and evil, matter and energy, perfection and imperfection. To have perfection, there must be an equal amount of imperfection. Blasphemy, said the young adult Hitler. This is our own little town of utter imperfection, and total chaos exists as a counterweight to the sheer perfection of the rest of the world. Absurd, said Adolf to the Warthog Man. Perfection cannot coexist with imperfection. As long as there is even a spark of imperfection, there is no perfection. In order to attain perfection, all faults must be erased. But then how do you explain this town? Asks the Warthog Man. If we are so perfect, how could we create a place like this? Surprising, or I guess unsurprising at this point. The story does the same thing every bad political book does, where it presents something, an idea, to a counterpoint that it doesn't agree with, and then just makes them go, and they can't actually defend their perspective. And that's what happens to Adolf in this, is he can't respond to the Warthog's argument here. But also, this argument right now is so stupid, since the freaking Warthog was just arguing with Adolf about how he is the perfect one and Adolf is the freak. And if he believes that there is perfection, that imperfection is needed to balance out perfection, then he should be the antithesis to Adolf. He should be the foil to Adolf's "we need perfection" based on what he has experienced. Because you could have done that as his own even character journey of running into that silk place and living here, where he has actually sort of adapted, where Adolf is like, no, we need to be eradicating all of it, and has been eradicating all of it. Instead, you have him being like, no, we need to eradicate the cripples, and also I hate all of this, and also I am the perfect one, you are the freak, but also the imperfect is a perfect balance. There's nothing here. It is just existing to make fake, shallow arguments about what it wanted to do, but what it couldn't figure out how to do in the storytelling. After that conversation, they then get to the nasty castle. It's described as a nasty castle. They climb up to the guards, who are like dead clown things, and they are told that they can't go in unless they become conjoined, because the goddess is conjoined. And they're like, that's so disgusting. Conjoined are imperfections that need to be eradicated. And they're like, well, that's offensive. So you can either be conjoined and get to the party, or you can shove off. We don't really care. But if you're not going to be conjoined and there's a conjoining machine over there, then get out. And so obviously the guys, to go and finish their mission, are going to go through the conjoining machine. The warthog, I don't know why you would pick to conjoin with this guy instead of your perfect wife, but I guess it's because that's technically your partner for this. And Adolf also thinks, quote, how can someone as disgusting and obnoxious think exactly the same thing about someone as perfectly beautiful as I am? Both Mr. Warthog and Adolf Hitler thought to themselves. So again, we have them both repeating this when Mr. Warthog in the previous scene was acting like imperfections balance out the imperfections, but we don't see that actually reflect anywhere in the text. For some reason, after they conjoin through the conjoining machine, they get into the castle, they sneak around into like basically an empty sewer, go through the sewer, squeeze in through it just for more stinky, gross descriptions, and then get to the side of the castle where everybody is actually having the party. And this is where they run into the high priest and Herod. Adolf is then brought to go and be introduced to the goddesses. He doesn't understand why these women are treated differently than all of the others in society when these two are lauded. Also, the goddesses are not actually conjoined because apparently they got a surgery to not be conjoined a couple of days ago and whatever. And they are described as, quote, Adolf changed his mind when Mr. Eyebrows brought them closer to the women. They were missing limbs. The one in the red skirt had lost a hand and half a foot. The one in the green was missing an arm to the shoulder, and between her legs dozens of thin wriggling tentacles protruded from beneath her skirt. Not the tentacles of a squid, but those of a jellyfish or sea anemone. They grew out of a crotch like long shuddering pubic hair. These women are not human. These are creatures like the others. Adolf felt himself nauseous as he realized that the oil they were rubbing against themselves was actually clear jelly that they made from their milking pubic tentacles. The jelly smelled like black olives. I swear, all of the descriptions are just random. Adolf tells the one woman that he's looking for an imperfect man, and she says, quote, are you against imperfection? Adolf hesitated. Yes, I believe perfection is all that is good and imperfection is all that is evil, said a voice hissing like a snake. Then Adolf realized it was the woman in the red skirt who was talking to him. Her head had moved when the voice last spoke. Is that so? Yes, it must be so. The woman in the red skirt must be the goddess, the wife of the golden eel. I agree, said Miss All. The imperfections must be erased. Only the perfect should be allowed to live. Yes, said Herr Hitler. My mission is to eliminate the last imperfect male so that I can bring perfection to the human gene pool. This part specifically made me go, is this going to end with Adolf going back to, the real world and then killing himself because he realizes that he is the imperfection in the gene pool? It doesn't actually get that level of self-awareness, but he is going to sort of die. We'll get there. The goddess decides that they have the same mission as Adolf, so they're going to show him their secret. Because he is connected to the pigman, the pigman also gets to go with them. They're on this elevator that just keeps passing a bunch of nonsense descriptions and an exercise of random that doesn't really matter because it's just like, and then it's a zoo, 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 and then it's dinosaur robots fighting each other. And then it's a zoo. They eventually get to the bottom, which is a laboratory, or where they're going. I don't know if it's the freaking bottom. And Adolf asks the goddesses why she has made women third-class citizens in this society. And she says, quote, men are easy to control. I'm only worried about the women, and I keep their social status the same as that of the animals to keep them from using their brains. Since then, I do not have problems anymore. So they're at the lab, opened a door with her goo ID where she sticks her arm in and it's just like pus up her arm. And it's like, oh, you can go in. And Adolf is shown her perfect specimen that she has created. Quote, when Adolf enters, he's faced with a large biotope surrounded by caged bars. Inside was a creature. Her skin was gray and armored. She had bat wings, eyes like an eagle, teeth like a shark, and claws of metal. Part insect, part reptile, part demon. The most hideous monster Adolf had ever seen. What do you think? Miss Owl said. Both Adolf and Warthog seemed paralyzed with disgust. The creature was wetting. It gave off an odor reminiscent of rotten chicken. Well, isn't he great? So, she says he. The description says she. Again, just can any of these people like do a basic copy edit? I can get over a lot of typos because they happen. But these are not just typos. These are just inconsistencies constant throughout that look like somebody doesn't care. And my guess is that they don't, because of all of the luck that I have had with Bizarro, which is one of the reasons I'm like, I don't think I might ever read Bizarro again on purpose, because this BS where it's just like, don't care. Anyway, Adolf believes that it's hideous, the creature is hideous, and says so. And obviously, this is offensive to the goddesses, who then are like dressing him down for being a failure, being ugly, his imperfections. And not only does she think that her creation is perfect, but also not only physically is it perfect, but also mentally it is perfect. And of all the things that I could have imagined being in this book, it was not an equivalent to the generative AI debate that is happening right now. Quote, Miss All giggled. His brain is his strongest trait. His memory is so good that he has never forgotten anything and will never forget anything. His math and analytical skills are perfect. He can learn any language, and in no time, he can think and plan faster than any other living being ever born. His brain is super brain. It is the greatest achievement. But it sure is like a computer, said Adolf. Computers are just tools. His brain is nothing but an organic supercomputer. He never has the creative or artistic talent that I have. He has artistic talent, Miss All said, only it is far more developed than anything you could ever comprehend. Each artistic attempt has led to a new masterpiece, which took the greatest artists, writers, and musicians a lifetime to do, and he creates in half an afternoon. But where is his passion and emotional depth? Young Adolf pointed out. It doesn't have the ability to feel like I do, doesn't have a soul. Your creature may be superior in body and mind, but I have a superior soul, and that alone really counts. A superior soul? What's that even supposed to mean? How can you measure the worth of a soul? If you don't know that, your creation is obviously lacking a soul, said young Adolf. There is no evidence that souls even exist, said Mrs. Owl. Perhaps you are just too inferior to understand the complexity of the human soul. No, your creature is nothing compared to me. Just look at him. He's disgusting. My race, we are pure beauty. We are a definition of perfection. The goddess gets fed up with Adolf arguing with her, slaps him, and then says, all right, your perfect soul against my creature's superior nature. And so she throws them in a cage to let them fight. First, the creature rips Warthog off of Adolf and like eats him, and he's in half. And then Adolf is like bleeding out, and he's like, I need to get to my other half so I can try to get back up and go and finish my mission. And he ends up sinking into the ground, his soul leaving his body as he then appears in the land of inanimate objects alongside his briefcase, a guitar, and something else. And he starts talking to them because he is dying. So, like, why the frick not? Might as well. He says that looking at the briefcase, he knows that that is his briefcase. And so he opens it. Of course, the stupid briefcase, because it is a living inanimate object now, it screams as its innards fall out because we're edgy. And the picture of this imperfect man is inside of the briefcase. And it looks like him, but with earlobes that are attached to the face instead of freely flying. He says that he can't give up on his mission now because he is so close. He knows what the person looks like. He can go for it. And the book ends with, quote, he strode through this new world of objects brought to life in pink-furred landscapes. He wiped his soul clean as he realized that he was no longer cut in two. He was back in his uniform, now perfectly ironed and spotless. I must now find a way to get out of here, said young Adolf Hitler, so that I can return to Stott, so that I can have possession reunion of one of the mutant children like the ghost girl did, so that I can become human again, so that I can work on getting more of my memories back, so that I can track down the imperfect man, so that I can wipe him out, so that I can go after the castle, return and find a way to get back to a normal size, so that I can return to my perfect world, so that I can become a national hero, so that I can live in peace and harmony and perfection for all eternity, forever and ever. And that is the end. How you feeling? Disappointed? Welcome to disappointment land with me. Also, you know, when you read Model Land, and it's got the bizarre stuff going on, but it uses the bizarre stuff, and it makes the bizarre stuff make sense within the world, and then you get this BS where it's just like, and none of it matters, and it's not doing anything. At least Model Land had a theme of not containing beauty into a singular standard, and had the Tyra Banks stand-in, I know there were a couple of them, but had the main Tyra Banks stand-in come in and be like, girls of very different types can be beautiful, and specifically pulling in these girls that were not considered typical beauties so that they could go to Model Land and become models and influence them and encourage them to become models, even when everybody else said that you didn't have the right look. Like, at least Model Land had a theme that was coherent and played throughout the story. And at least the only thing that fell through was whatever happened to her real dad. This is just something enough to make me not trust the author, the same way that Clown Tier Junkies, and I don't trust the author ever again. Anyway, my closing comments on this kind of book, on this book specifically. One, the thing that I dislike the most about any sort of extreme or strange content is, be it extreme horror, dark erotica, bizarro, artsy stuff like this, is it all often seems to forsake minimum standards of consistency, of proofreading, of care. And you can find some really interesting stuff, really creative ideas in some of this stuff, but often it is just like aforementioned stuff, or it doesn't really matter, and it leans on being too quickly made and sensational in order to get attention, so it lets everything drop to get stuff out as fast as possible. It also works on like a single draft rapid release. Garbage needs to be burned. Look, I'm joking. And it reminds me, and sometimes it even focuses on being opportunistic, like Matt Shaw's Roe versus Wade, which was immediately in response to something, to get it out while it was relevant, to be sensational, and to try to ride that wave, which I hate. I think it's disgusting to be sensational. Have a little bit of care for your stories that you craft when you ask people to pay you money and spend their time on it, instead of just throwing stuff out as fast as you can to try to capitalize on quick, sloppy, low-processed garbage. If you've got the brain and the creativity to do insane things, make it matter, instead of just being like, look at me over here. It just makes me so irritated that so little care is put into something. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised when the covers and titles rely on sensationalism to sell. I will accept that L is my own, but it's still annoying, and I'm still going to criticize not only the market practice, but the practice of the writers that do this garbage, because people don't talk about it enough. From the multiple bizarro books that I have now read at this point, it feels like many of them either hide information from you to go, oh yeah, later on, or they just say screw it and then throw stuff out at you randomly. So there's not like, you're not going to follow a trail of things to then have it slowly revealed and be able to look back and be like, oh, hints were left. It's just like, as opportunistic as the books are, so is the content in the book. So when they need something to happen, they're just going to make it happen on you. And if you look at pretty much all of my other reviews, if a book does this, I hate it, because what it's doing is it's just saying, don't trust the author. Anything that the characters do doesn't matter, because it's not going to follow through. There's going to be no consequences, and the author will clean up whatever they want whenever they want. It doesn't freaking matter. So why invest? Why care? For me, the entirety of this book felt underdeveloped, and it just relied on being shocking or shocking. The characters had no personality, no consistency, which meant that there was nothing to care about, nothing to hold on to, nothing to be like, oh, what is Adolf going to learn? What is the mission? What is he not going to learn? What is the plot going to be? What is the conflict between the characters going to be? There is none. It was just shock for shock's sake, and anything can happen. It made me think of the spider orgies and the sex dolls that turned her vagina into a cotton candy producing hole that she sold at the abandoned carnival where she later worked once her porno studio was shut down. You've got the suiciding in the cartoon forest with the cartoons that joined the bee cartoon women sucking on the queen bee's fecal matter, and then her killing the queen and becoming the queen herself so that they could all just vomit on each other. And then you've got, the hammerhead wives with the actual hammers for heads that were building so fast to outbuild the guy as he tries to escape the house. That's pretty horrible. And then you've got the guy that went to meet his high school sweetheart. And he was like a retiree level age. And he gets there and it's not her. It's like her great granddaughter. And so then he starts making the moves on the great granddaughter. And the great granddaughter lifts up her skirt to tell the old man to suck it. And she has a bass attached to her crotch. And the bass gives him a blowjob. And it's just, and then I think that was one of the stories that just abruptly ended because the author was just like, fuck it. A lot of the stories in Clown Tier Junkie was just a waste of time, really. The fact that it can be sold in that condition is tragic. And I went into this actually hopeful because I specifically remember liking War Pig, the short story in one of this author's other books. But now I'm questioning if I would even still be interested in it if I read it, or if that was a trick and all bizarros actually fail. Your novellas and weirdo fictions don't have to be so low effort that it can't even have consistent characterization between people on the same page, let alone just consistent pronouns throughout the story. But it feels like it's literally one of a handful of genres where people put as little effort in it as possible and make names off of themselves by surprise lol content or as extreme content as possible. Now, I don't want to say that this kind of book or this kind of genre is a waste of time because I could see ideas here, but it wasn't really cared about. This kind of thing can actually be really interesting if you take care and develop it into something and sell it for more than just the novelty. But you actually do have to care when you go into these creative endeavors. And if you don't, I think it cheapens not just the genre, but the idea of being creative, being daring, and doing these sorts of things. And again, I've mentioned a couple of different types of bizarro that are very common. Courage the Cowardly Dog would be considered bizarro. It is a very interesting genre if you do it well and you care about it. But it is so easy to do wrong, and it is often capitalized on by edgelords and people with very traumatic backgrounds. Like, if you read Suicide in the Cartoon Forest, like that entire novella, I went back and read the blog post book review I did on that, and I was like, I am worried about this girl's mental health. I hope that she is doing better now. I wish that the characters had had more consistent personalities to be able to have the difference between the warthog, Adolf, and even Perfect Woman and how those work together, and even the noseless priest, because there was a good setup for the characters to conflict and to actually have conflict, but it wasn't there at this point. And I'm sorry if either of these are your favorite genres, but this is just how I feel right now. Bizarro and splatterpunk feel like they are almost exclusively trauma coping or political genres. Maybe it was stupid of me to go into them not assuming that, and I'm sorry. I like to assume that I can maybe, probably, hopefully have fun rather than assuming any genre is being explicitly politically driven outside of poetry. Finally, I think that I have overgrown bizarro possibly. I first found it when I was going to graduate school in 2014, 2015, 2016 when I got involved with AWP, so I was around more alternative stuff, while also the university stuff, while also the like artsy stuff, and so that's where you find the bizarro, because they had a couple different bizarro magazines at AWP when I was there, and I got some of them. And I like to be surprised, but I like there to be logic behind the surprise, because if there is no logic to your theme, or if there even is no theme, then it has no purpose to me. And other people read for other reasons, and this could be enough for them, but it's not enough for me. Also, on top of this, because I always try to even it out, which I'm being judgmental, I'm having my opinions as a reader. Authors can write anything that they want, and people can read anything that they want, but I personally find it more insulting than anything for authors to specifically waste my time reading something like this freak show. I know. I did go in this. I went in this with a high expectation. Well, I went in this with hopeful expectations that it would at least be something meaningful, especially when the author has this note at the beginning of it talking about perfectionism, but the author never actually connects their thoughts to the theme and the setting of the book. And so it's just, I was at least just hoping for consistency in something, but I should have considered that I read short stories and not a novella, and that this author may not be able to actually do a novella, or may have not been able to do a novella when they did this book. They've done other books since then. I have at least one other book from them that I was going to try, but I guess it's probably on the even lower burner at the moment. The very last note on this is just going to be the obvious imagery here. Doing anything with Nazis or Hitler in earnest is very, very hard because people are going to assume intentions and name call instead of actually seeing what maybe we're trying to do in a lot of cases. And it can be scary to do anything that may look like sketchy to somebody. I don't know if that was one of the, and so if the main character in this was given a little more empathy to actually explore this idea and then still be stuck in this perfection of deleting anything that is not perfect, it may have looked too much like being empathetic to an evil cause, or it may have been taken the wrong way, or the author may not have been able to create a character in that believable way, because there are certain things that we may not be able to do because we are so against them. Like, I'm not going to ever write a story, I say this, now it's going to sneak up on me someday, but I don't think that I could write a story that justifies a cheater and makes the cheater the main character. Now, there are going to be other things that I can do, and then people be like, you can do that, but you can't do that. Yes, people are weird, okay? Books are where we are allowed to explore ideas and explore things and be weird. And at least the author was able to do that, and that's what I do enjoy, is getting the expression, getting the peek into somebody's head, but then this just looks like a mess of toys. That's what it is. It was, for me, it's more disappointing because you clearly got all of this potential, all of this creativity, and these ideas with these themes and these characters, but you don't bring it to something meaningful. It's just a throwaway joke. And obviously with the cover girls like this, maybe that feels like expecting too much, but I like to think that expecting consistency isn't too high of an expectation, like internal consistency in the world. But I've also read Fourth Wing and Iron Flame and Light Lark. And yeah. With that said, those are my thoughts. That is Adolf in Wonderland by Carlton Mellick III. Have you read this book? Will you read this book? Have you ever read any Bizarro books before? Let me know in the comments down below. With that said, hope you enjoyed this overview. Have a good weekend and don't die.
Was that Wayland Cross in the trunk? Do you know, or is that something that's still being figured out?
The person in the trunk was not Wayland Cross. Is he in trouble? We don't know who did it, but as the owner of the car, the longer he's missing, the worse it looks for him.
Cross isn't a killer. For the last couple of years, the average number of murders in Baltimore has been over 300, and it's been going up. Mind you, that's only whatever the badges count as official murder, and believe me, there are people that don't count when they die. Wayland? If you're down here, tell me. I'm not talking to the badges, I've been looking for you. They found a body in your trunk. Why? Did you do that? To the left, plain black letters read along the wall. You walked in the corridor. Once that ends, you chose the dark is on the right. My vision goes blurry, flickers black and black and black for longer intervals until I can't see anything at all. I'm not screaming anymore, but my voice echoes back to me. Where the hell am I? You're dead, Josephine. Even smart people do stupid shit sometimes, right?